Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the RIA Collective. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to my guest. This is a gentleman I've known for some months at this point, so we don't have a real long relationship, but I'll tell you what, he's got something different going on than most advisors. Our guest today is Sean Polley of Polley Wealth Management in Orlando, Florida. Sean recently started his RIA a couple of years ago, and he comes out of the bank channel, right? So for a lot of the advisors that listen into our show that are coming out of more traditional channels, maybe the Merrill Lynch and the Morgan Stanley and the UBS seeking that independent space, Sean's going to be able to speak to people who come maybe more the JP Morgan as part of your experience, SunTrust. Anyway, I don't want to spoil all this. So before we go any further, let me welcome Sean Polley to RIA Collective. Sean, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Charlie. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, awesome, man. So listen, Sean, we talk about this since we've gotten to know each other a little bit. Really what we're trying to do here is build a resource for the audience of listeners that are thinking about going into that independent space, whether that's independent broker-dealer or even making a bigger jump from independent broker-dealer into the RIA space. And so my guests typically, really, we're here to let them know it's not so scary, in spite of what the firm they're with might say. And give them advice on how to make that happen. And I thought with your background in bank channel, you're a great guest, Sean. You're going to be able to shed a lot of light on this move for a lot of people.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to help and provide any sort of feedback that I can for people.
Awesome. First off, let's talk about you. I mean, you're a dad. I know that, you're not only a dad, but you're like little league coach extraordinaire, right?
I don't know about that. I try.
Yeah. Is it one son, or do you have more than one son? I know we talk about the one son who plays a lot of baseball quite a bit. So
yes, just one. He just turned 10.
All right, man. All right. Well, mine are going to be 13 next week, 13 and 14. So I've been through that age, but wow, it's quite an adventure. And he just made it to like the traveling little league team, right?
He did. So he just made All-Stars, which is pretty exciting. So awesome. He's preparing. They've got a tournament that they'll play in a district tournament. Then if they win that, they move on to like a regional tournament. And then if they win that, they move on to a state tournament. So pretty exciting stuff.
And now like the big Little League World Series is that in Cooperstown? Is that right? Am I saying that correctly?
So the Little League World Series, he doesn't qualify for that yet. So he is a 10-year-old. So that's actually what's called 12U. Okay. So the farthest his group can go is to the state championship this year.
Okay. Awesome. So a couple years away, man. Good training ground. Well, very cool. I know you're really proud of that, and of course you're the coach that brought him to this level of success too.
Well, I do my best. I wouldn't say it's all on him.
very, very cool. But that coaching, I mean, it's we talk about your interaction with youth sports. Now the financial world's very different, but you also act very much as a coach for your clients through Polley Wealth Management.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's an important aspect of what we do. It's something that's really near and dear to my heart because I think it's important. We can help them, but we really need to be a partner with our clients and be able to coach them along and help to make sure that they're, doing good financial behaviors as well.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, even on the marketing side, right? What I've been doing for a living for 20 years, it's the same thing, right? We've got clients that come in and see this as a vendor providing service relationship. And certainly that's true, but our successful clients recognize that it's a partnership and they have a role in this as we do as well. So absolutely. So that's important. Now, you're coaching Little League, you got family at home, you've got a base of clients. Man, how do you find time for all of that? Is work-life balance? I mean, that's a big topic that we talk about, wellness, right? Financial wellness, overall life wellness. How do you balance all that stuff, Sean? Are there any tips for our listeners out there?
Honestly, it's always a challenge, right? So, I think we set our priorities and what's important to us. And, certainly being able to spend that time with my family and with my son. And, that's one of the reasons I get out there and coach. I'll never get another chance to be with him at 9 years old and at 10 years old. So, this is my opportunity to get out there and spend time with him.
And it happens so quickly.
so quickly.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely great. Everybody tells you that, right? But until you experience, you don't really know it.
That's right.
John, I want to talk a little bit about the culture at the, at the banks that, you were a part of. I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I did some research just making sure that I had the details down, but you started with Fidelity, is that right? And then worked into a position with JP Morgan and further on into SunTrust.
I did. I worked with Fidelity for a while. Then I spent some time with JP Morgan. And then my last position before going independent was with SunTrust.
Okay, cool. How long were you with SunTrust? They just went through a recent merger with BB&T. It affected me. I do some of my banking now with Truist.
So I wasn't there very long, probably 2.5 years.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a move that I made. And then once I made it, I had wished I had gone the independent route at that point.
I hear that so often. In fact, I've got a good friend that started as an Edward Jones advisor. Her partner started with Merrill and then went to Edward Jones, and they both collectively were like, oh, we got to, they had entrepreneurial mindset, right? Wanted to get into that independent space, took a payout with LPL to make that move, battled Jones along the way, as tends to happen, right? That's not a commentary on Jones in any way, but the firms are going to fight for those assets. And then landed with LPL and went, wait a second. I thought we'd made this leap to independence. And of course they did to some degree, but they very quickly paid all that money back to LPL after they already spent a good portion of it and started their RIA. So that story that, the same thing, right? Is God, I wish we'd have done it sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the wealth management business for 25 years. So I'm probably someone that made the transition later than most people do. But looking back, that's one thing that I probably should have done a lot sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, it's, as I look across the landscape, right. And, you and I are talking to different people. I talk to a lot of RIAs, a lot of independent broker dealers. I do a lot of coaching of, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch advisors as well. I don't know that you're late in your career in doing that. Right. I think having that foundation of 25 years brings you a lot of organized experience that now better translates into, you setting up the organization. I want to talk a little bit about that. One of the things I love about those big firms is the training, right? Is the training that's provided there, right? You take a firm like Morgan Stanley, to my best knowledge, that's 8,500, 9,000 advisors, might be bigger than that now. People come through that type of firm. I think it's a great place to cut your teeth in the industry, and go through some top-notch training that they put a lot of resources into. Was that your experience with Fidelity and JP Morgan as well as in younger in your career?
Absolutely. Actually, earlier in my career, I was with Schwab and then Fidelity. So those are actually excellent training grounds. So I wouldn't change that certainly about what I did. Because there's so much that you learn from those organizations, really about everything investing, financial planning, really helping people, working with people. So they're definitely excellent training grounds for early in your career.
Yeah, I love that. We run some recruiting campaigns for companies as well. And it seems like the sweet spot that most people are looking for in recruiting to a more independent broker dealer, is 5 to 7, maybe 7 to 10 years at one of those firms to cut your teeth in the industry, get your feet under you, start to build some business, start to build some confidence in what you're doing. Would that echo your sentiment as well? As maybe close to a decade would be the best kind of time frame there?
I would, absolutely. I mean, the more knowledge that you can soak up from those firms, certainly the better off you're going to be, to serve your clients. I think depending on where you start can be a big difference. For me, I think starting in those areas, I didn't have the same pressure to sell. So I was really able to take the time to really learn about the business, right? Really learn about investing, learn about financial planning, so that I had that solid foundation before there was any pressure to, try and grow my own business.
That's great. And you're right. Not all firms are cut of the same cloth, right? Some you've got quotas immediately. And certainly that can be difficult for a young person who maybe doesn't have a natural market built out. So
Absolutely.
was even from the beginning of your career, Sean, was independence something that you knew you wanted to do?
It was
100%.
definitely something before I started my career that I wanted to eventually do.
Okay.
So yes, it was something that I had in mind. I just, early in my career, I really wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing, right? So that I got that training, that I understood, what I needed to know to be able to help other people.
So you knew that was coming, but still 25 years was, and I don't want to, don't say anything you're not comfortable with here. Okay. Was there a catalyst moment? Was there something that happened? You were like, okay, now's the time.
Well, for me, I guess I wouldn't say there was a specific catalyst moment. It was something as I had changed firms in the past that I had considered, is now the right time to do that. But, one of those things, sometimes, starting a family, having a, young family, it's something you have to have a lot of confidence and make sure that it's something that you can, kind of work through and make it work. And, early in that transition, it's going to be a challenge. So you need to make sure that you kind of got everything in order and you have the confidence to be able to make that transition.
Yeah, and I think timing in life is really important. Your point about starting family, mine, starting Social Advisors really aligned, kind of in the same time. So we'll be 9 years old this October. Started in 2013, which made my kids like 3 and 4 years old at the time. Life was increasing in expense, and it's like, if I don't do it now, when do I do it? Was so not that I necessarily had a catalyst moment either, but it aligned with the right time in life, I believe. Was and it was I asked my wife, I said, give me 60 days. If I can't make something happen in 60 days, I promise I'll go get another job. And she was like, all right, you got 60 days. So, luckily, or we, worked my tail off to prove concept and start to create some revenue within that 60-day time period. So, yeah, so same thing, right? It wasn't necessarily a catalyst that drove that. But, certainly it was a timing in life, I suppose.
Right. Absolutely.
Was it a scary leap?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was, I was going from the, I hate to say comfort's probably not the right word, but, I was comfortable. Right.
Yeah.
So, kind of venturing out and saying, hey, this is all going to be on me from this point forward, was a bit scary. Sure.
Yeah. Agreed. I was figure I could fall back on something, right? I've got other skills, and certainly I've been successful in job roles before, but absolutely it was a scary leap because it was diving into whatever savings we'd accumulated to make it all happen. So it was going to hurt us a little bit financially if we didn't make it work, but whatever. Life's short. You got to take chances, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if compliance wants to hear that at all, but anyway.
Smart chances.
Smart chances. Calculated risks, right?
Right.
Sean, it is, we talked about it before I hit the record button, right? Is that for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, whatever it is, I could do the research, tell you exactly what it is. The numbers at FINRA continue to decrease. Now, there's reasons for that. I'm sure, there's, from my understanding, there's less people coming into the industry than are retiring, right?
Yep.
But it would speak to something bigger. Having made that transition to that RIA space, what do you think? What do you think is behind those numbers? Is everybody looking to go to independent? I think technology is a part of it. The commoditization of technology. Anything else you can think of that really points to that migration to a more independent industry?
I think there's quite a few reasons. Personally, for me, technology was part of it. I came from the bank where the technology wasn't great.
Yep.
And I was kind of seeing all these opportunities in technology in our industry with fintech and, really ways that I thought I could better serve my clients. So that was a part of it. Part of it was, having that pressure to sell. So it is as much as you try to be a fiduciary at the end of the day, you do have quotas at the big institutions. And you do have proprietary products, which is also another big pain point for me as an advisor over the years, really.
Yeah.
And by going independent, I was able to put all that behind me. So a lot of, I think part of the misconception many times is that when you go independent, you may not have access to the same investment products or investment vehicles that you had. I know, with SunTrust and JP Morgan, but the reality is I have access to more now. And I have access to really a lot of information that I didn't have access to there, because you still have all the big investment companies, the big investment managers, they're competing for my business now, right? So they're sharing their information, they're sharing their strategist information, they're sharing their economist information that I didn't have as much of when I was with, a JP Morgan. I had access to all of their information, but I didn't have as much access to Goldman Sachs. I didn't have as much access to BlackRock, to some of the other big investment managers, to Dimensional, that I have now. And like I said, they're eager to share that information with me to make sure that, they're competing for me. And like I said, when I do something now for my clients, it's not because I've got, that name on the door. It's because, it's the right thing for my clients. So, when it comes to building an investment portfolio, I've got an opportunity to build a truly all-star investment portfolio. If JP Morgan is the best money manager for that client, or fits the best part of their investment portfolio, we're going to use JP Morgan. If Goldman Sachs, is the best money manager or fits the best part of their portfolio, we're going to use them. So we may have, like I said, a truly all-star investment portfolio where you don't have as much as that access when you're at, one of those big firms.
Yeah, fiduciary. I mean, you said it all in one word, right? And
Yep.
the industry. I mean, our compensation models in the industry have changed pretty greatly in the last, 4 decades, right? From that transactional broker kind of picture to that fiduciary fee-based, evolution in the way it's priced. And I don't think we're done. I don't think that's done. I think, there's some inherent issues with the fee-based pricing as well, where I see a lot of people gravitating to something a little more subscription-based, which I know is something that you've rolled out, especially for, those young professionals who are maybe coming out of school with some debt, who, need help, but don't necessarily have the assets to go get world-class help. The $250,000 of investable assets as the minimum for many, many people. Talk a little bit about that subscription base, Sean. That's something that makes you fairly unique, and the benefit of that type of pricing for those young professionals in and around Orlando and, anywhere else that you do business.
Sure, absolutely. So, because of my experience in the business, I worked at firms where we had $250,000, $500,000, $1 million minimum investable asset requirements just to be able to meet with people, to help people. So part of the thing that I wanted to do really with my firm is I wanted to be able to reach people earlier in their career, or be able to reach people who maybe have been working in their career. Maybe they've got most of their assets accumulated in a 401k. For a lot of investment firms out there, because those assets aren't able to move, or they don't have big assets that they can move to them to manage, there's really no opportunity there for that advisor. So that advisor isn't able to help them. So with the subscription model, what it does is it allows us to work with all of those investors. And it's an ongoing, you're really paying for our advice and our coaching, so that we're looking at not just your investable assets, we're looking at how are you managing your money across the board, and being able to partner with you and help you to make sure that you're making good financial decisions with everything that you do with your money.
And that's so important, because there's such a big part of this industry that simply isn't going to touch those people, because there's not the back end benefit, financial benefit for doing that. So I think that's wonderful. And of course, gives you an opportunity to grow with those people. Opens the door early in the career, helps them make good decisions to get the right start, and timing is everything. I think that's awesome. And it is, I see more and more of it, but it is still fairly unique having that subscription ability, so that somebody who's in their late 20s, early 30s can afford to get the same world-class advice that someone who's accumulated $500,000 in their portfolio. So
absolutely. And I think another important part of that is, when we talk about being a fiduciary, I think that there's no better way to be a true fiduciary than in that model, right? So we're not requiring them to move assets. As a matter of fact, if they like keeping their assets wherever they have them and they like, placing the trades on those assets, that's okay. They can do that, but they've got somebody here who can provide advice to them that can help them to make sure that they're making good decisions.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. Think about the year prior to you making that change from SunTrust to opening Polley Wealth Management. What did you do well during that time to position yourself for this move to full independence with your RIA? And is there anything during that time that you wish you'd have done better? This again, for our listeners, as you're going to make this change, what are those important things to do, prior to that, the 12 months, 6 months, 3 months prior to making that big change in your career, that help you maybe move more assets, whatever the case may be?
So if you're looking to create your own RIA, certainly there's a lot of work involved in doing that. With the registration and everything that you have to go through, is, as much as they tell you, hey, this might take 30 days, it never finishes that quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of dictates a little bit of your time frame once you get the ball rolling. But I think well before that, you really have to sit down and go through your numbers and kind of understand, what's it going to cost you to make this happen? What's it going to cost you to make that transition? And then what sort of resources do you have to be able to help you get through that transition? So, starting by maybe looking at your client base to see if there's an opportunity there to be able to move some of your clients with you, and kind of going through that and getting really detailed about, what that looks like, if that's even possible, depending on, what type of non-compete or whatever that you might have with the firm that you're at.
Sure.
And really understanding, what ability you might have to kind of have some of that foundation to help get you started as far as the client base that may be able to move with you. And then, understanding what the costs are going to be involved, from your registration costs to your technology that you're going to have to put together, to office space, and everything that's involved in kind of starting your own business.
Yeah, all that back office stuff goes away, right? Now all of a sudden you need a compliance resource, a financial planning resource, right? CRM. Something we dabble in quite a bit, all of a sudden, all of these things stack up, right? So I think that's great. When I ask that question of others, they talk about client relationship, and that's important, right? You got to make sure that you're solidifying relationships in that, 6, 9, 12 months prior to that move. Who are the key people you got to get closer to maybe, so that you help yourself retain those assets. But I think more important than that is what you just said about understanding what your costs are. Right. I worked with a young advisor once. I won't go into any firms, anything else. Don't want to use any identifiers, right? He was extremely hung up on his compliance restrictions, wanted to be able to use Instagram, and a young man, probably today, I would think is still south of 35 years old, right? He made the move based on that one thing. Really wanted to get out from under the thumb of FINRA compliance or FINRA related compliance and focus. Now, I don't think SEC necessarily makes it easier. Maybe the archiving is a little bit, is 3 years instead of 7 years, if I'm understanding it correctly. Have you found that? In that move from a FINRA environment to an SEC environment, have you found that the compliance has gotten easier for you? Because that's a major concern I see with with a lot of people in those more captive firms.
Yep. So it definitely has gotten easier in general.
Okay.
However, if you're starting your own RIA, that compliance is on you, right?
Yeah. Right.
So yes, it is easier. I think if you're joining an RIA, you definitely have a lot more flexibility that you didn't have before. So it really depends. If you're starting your own firm, you have to realize that you're going to have to wear that compliance hat. But like I said, you definitely are getting more flexibility than what you had, with your BD and with your larger firms.
Well, and if you're in charge of compliance, the turnaround time is on you now instead of somebody else.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't take a month to get anything approved anymore.
Yeah, that's right. You're a little more nimble, I suppose, huh?
Right.
So in addition to compliance, one of the unique things about our industry, and there's a lot of them, successful advisors eventually, well, many of them eventually become business owners like yourself, right? The skill set that creates a successful advisor is not the same skill set that creates a successful CEO and leader of your own firm at this point. You talk about compliance as, one of those changes. Now you've got to add this responsibility. What else from a leadership perspective? You've got advisors that are, in addition to you, part of Polley Wealth Management. Talk about leadership, Sean, and your evolution as a professional as your roles evolved.
Sure, absolutely. So it's definitely different skill sets. I think what helped me is having some management roles in the firms before I went independent. Because working with your end clients is one skill set. Working with advisors to help them to grow, to guide them, that's definitely a whole nother skill set. And then being able to manage the business and make sure that it's a successful business, that involves even another greater skill set. So
going from again, I can run some parallels here. Right. Going from wearing a marketing and business development hat with firms prior to starting Social Advisors to being, oh my gosh, this is everything. Yeah, certainly a learning curve. There's resources out there, right? So let's talk a little bit about your RA, about Polley Wealth Management. We learned, the subscription model is one of the things that makes you unique. It allows people who may not have access to world-class advice and coaching. It makes that hurdle easier for them, for young professionals. Who else do you like to work with? Is there a certain type of person that you enjoy working with? I'll shut up and let you talk, Sean.
I mean, personally, for me, I really enjoy working with different age groups. I think for me, that's been very exciting. I think because I've been slotted really into such a certain age group where it was, retirees mostly here in Florida, just because of the asset minimums that we had. Generally, you were working with older people that have, done a great job of accumulating assets, and they've kind of reached that stage. So, certainly I do enjoy working with them. I've worked with them most of my career. But what's been exciting with my firm and with this retainer model is it's really allowed me the opportunity to work with younger people, to move that age group younger, whether it's people in their 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s even, that are just, really getting started in their careers, and they've got that first job out of college or first job where they're, starting to make some money, and they want to make sure that they do all the right things from the beginning. And that's exciting because you don't have to change bad behaviors that they've kind of learned over life, right? Yeah. So they're fresh and they don't know what they don't know. So you're really able to help them to do everything right from the very beginning and really get that head start.
Yeah, and I'm gonna comment on some things personally. Like I went into college, and they put these loans in front of you, right? And as an 18-year-old kid, you're like, wow, I can get $12,000 for this year. And I mean, you're not even thinking about your need to pay that back ever, right? Right. So I took loans, I took student loans. Now I think I walked out of school with, 22, 23,000. It wasn't like I blew it up so much that I couldn't recover from that. But for a lot of people, higher education puts you in a debt cycle. Right? You kind of get stuck in a debt cycle where now, okay, we got these student loans, but I graduate, I need a car, right? I'm not making a lot of money yet. I'm going to finance that car. All of a sudden you've got this debt cycle that starts. The ability, and I love that that's part of your mission, is the ability to stop that before it starts, because all of a sudden you're in your mid 30s and you're staring at this, this debt where it's difficult to start an accumulation stage when you're refilling that hole that you built for the prior decade. Right. So I such a valuable resource you are in that regard.
So true. Absolutely. I even remember it's not even just those things. I remember in college, the credit card companies, right? They would offer you the free t-shirts or whatever, for a college student to sign up for a credit card. I mean, they just, whatever they could. And really it was getting you off on the wrong track.
Yeah. Yeah. And, putting you in this cycle where, for a lot of people, it's difficult to escape.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think that affects, listen, again, maybe too personal, but I watched that affect my parents for way too long. Right. I mean, so anyway, so we won't go down that road, right? We all have a personal story around that, but certainly, yeah. So I think, you create a wonderful resource for young people who are just looking to do the right things, but in the consumer society we live in, it's so easy to do the wrong things. Right. So
absolutely.
Sean, are you growing the team at Polley Wealth Management? Is that part of the mission, is to bring others in under your umbrella and sharing your mission and values?
Absolutely. That's definitely the plan here. I think with my experience, 25 years in this, and I've worked for, some of the largest investment firms and banks out there, I've learned a lot about what I think they do right and what I think they could do better. And I've really taken that knowledge into what I'm trying to build here at Polley Wealth Management. So I'm definitely looking to recruit and bring advisors in that are, aligned with that want to do the right thing for their clients, that want to have access to, really everything that's possible. I mean, we really truly have access to, when we talk about investment vehicles, investment managers, investment products, we really have access to everything that's possible out there, but we do it in a fiduciary way, right? So our clients are paying us for our advice and to do the right thing for them. And we truly have the ability to be able to do that.
That's awesome. How about our listeners, Sean, that aren't ready to make a leap? Now, don't want to talk to you necessarily about joining your team, but recognize that you are a wonderful resource for people who are thinking about, and I think the stat I heard, I can't back this up, but so it's hearsay, is like 55% of advisors are considering independence at any one given time. So it's a tremendous stat. If we've got listeners who just want to kind of tap into your knowledge and your experience, you open to having those conversations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Certainly. I mean, going through what I went through and making that transition, I know I had a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. So, deciding if that was the right thing for me to do. So, I'm certainly open to be able to help anybody that's got questions, that wants to, kind of talk through that and see if it makes sense for them.
Awesome. And also, I think you call it Polley Wealth Management. I called it Polley Wealth Management. So my apologies. That's your last name, man. I don't want to do that.
That's okay.
So for those looking it up, it's Polley Wealth Management. What's the best way, Sean, for people to get a hold of you, whether they're looking for a new soft landing spot, or, they're young in their career and want to do the right things, or even maybe if we've got some listeners who are looking for wealth management services, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Sure. So you can always find us by going to our website. It's polleywealth.com. We're also out there on all the social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And then also they can also reach out to me directly here at the office.
Okay. Awesome. What's that phone number?
Phone number is 407-337-1085.
Awesome. Sean, you've got such great experience, man. I want to thank you first off for being with us, sharing your 2.5 decades of industry experience with those big firms, right? I love the two things we talked about, and actually it's one thing that we talked about that I love the most, is the fiduciary. That translates right into that retainer subscription type model pricing, where you guys are bringing resources to people who, sure, that retiree that's got $1 million in their portfolio or more, they need help too, but they've gotten there, right? It's
right.
Those people who are getting, helping young people get off on the right foot. Man, there's so much value in doing that. So thank you for doing that for, people walking out of college, getting started in a career. We don't want to see them get buried, because that creates a lot of stress for the following decade. So you got a pure heart. You're serving people in that way, Sean, and I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing that with our audience.
Thank you, Charlie. My pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
You got it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to RIA Collective. Your time is valuable, and we appreciate you sharing it with us.